That it was inspired by the Tony Curtis film Houdini. Either way, that's The Moonlight Shadow from 1983. Now, Joanne Sweeney from Downings has launched a new audiobook. She is a digital marketing consultant and trainer who now lives in Salt Hill. And she has written what could be described as the ultimate guide to digital marketing for government and the public sector, to improve transparency and to build public trust. The book, Public Sector Marketing Pro, was first launched actually in 2018, but then there was a second edition after the pandemic, for a post-pandemic age, if you like. That was launched at the end of last year, and now there's the audiobook version. I'm delighted that Joanne joins us now from Salt Hill. Joanne, how are you?
I'm great, and there's blue skies in Salt Hill today.
Well, more than we have here at the moment. Well, intermittently, here and there. So you hold on to them as long as you can. Tell us, in layman's terms, tell us a little bit, because, you know, digital marketing, it can go over the heads of, me and maybe others. And just explain a bit what the book is about, because it's not just digital marketing, it's digital marketing for government and public sector.
Exactly, and you could probably say that I deliberately chose this niche, and probably because, I started my career just where you are, in that studio in Highland Radio as a broadcast journalist, and covering the health board meetings, covering the council meetings, covering court cases. So I've always had a massive interest in what we call public interest messaging. So for every reason that the people of Donegal listen to Highland Radio, to keep themselves up to date with what's happening and on things that affect their daily lives. So it's politics, it's health, it's local government, it's education, schools. And because communications has changed and media has changed, and again, all of your listeners will know this because they all have smartphones. They're probably streaming Highland Radio on smart speakers. They're watching you or Greg or Donal earlier on Facebook. They're getting their news from social media. So communications has changed. And I guess ever since I left, my job in journalism, I've always kept up to date with how my industry is changing. And then about 5 years ago, I decided that I'd maybe try and corner the market for digital marketing for government and public sector. So not for businesses, because when you're marketing businesses online, ultimately you're trying to get sales. But when you're marketing any public sector organisation online, what they are trying to get is public trust and public buy-in. And so I link my journalism days to my digital marketing skills to create this book, because it didn't exist. And I guess you could say I saw the opportunity.
In a way, it's a battle for our hearts and minds with this sort of message that you outline, or more to the point, how you outline in the book how it's delivered and how it's best delivered, and what's the most effective way of delivering it.
Yeah, I do. It's essentially a handbook, and I know lots of the people who've bought the book say to me that they have it on their desk and they can go to a particular chapter and it will help them communicate better online. Because must understand, and you said it yourself, this landscape changes so quickly and it's really hard to keep up to date. So I guess I thought I could create something that was really useful. The other part of it is there has to be buy-in in these organisations to commit to being truly transparent and publishing real-time updates on social networks, on websites, citizens being able to receive text messages. And the best example of that was probably during the pandemic, when we could get live updates of how many COVID cases there were, receiving our vaccine certificate and all of that. So there's two sides to it. One is teaching people through the book how to do it right and how to do it well. But secondly, trying to get those organisations to buy into the ethos that they exist in the public interest, and so they need to keep the public up to date.
So let's go back to the pandemic and how the message was, and various messages were conveyed. If you had to if it was an exam and you were marking various governments in this exam at the end of it all, what sort of a score would you give the government?
Well, you know what? I say it in the book, and to try and remember how I quote it myself, is that government and public sector agencies showed true agility. Almost overnight, they transformed. And I knew from my experience that they were really reluctant adopters of social media and digital communications, but they were forced into it, essentially. And they responded very positively. And if you think about it, John, you were broadcasting from the station, probably on your own, because it's social distancing. But the information was coming into the news desk and to the live shows. And they were live streaming press conferences on Twitter and Facebook. They were communicating in DMs. You could send the HSE a Twitter private message, and they would respond and answer people's questions. You had higher education, so schools and colleges who moved their courses online. And then you had local government and councils who were then facilitating citizens by doing any business that they needed and keeping them updated through their website and social media. So I would definitely give them a B+ if I was scoring them.
Okay, that's a pretty good score. But it was a huge learning curve for not just the public sector, but for so much of the population. And we still, we're still dealing with it today, and that there was a whole shift in the way many people work, and a lot of people still doing either hybrid or maybe working from home.
Yeah, that's one of the remarkable changes that we're all experiencing. Like, I'm sitting in my office here in Salthill in my house, and I used to travel in that, and now I can talk to anyone across the world. And I don't think we've found that equilibrium and that balance of how the new way of working and living has fleshed out after the pandemic. And I think that will take a while, and I think just all of us need to just accept that and say, yeah, we're still in change mode and in transformation mode. But like, for one, I would say I'm very grateful that we had the technology that we could communicate. You think about FaceTiming, family and friends. I couldn't get to Donegal for months. I mean, listen, there's people in Donegal who hadn't seen family in Australia and across the world for months, if not years. But we had the technology of the smartphone, the internet connection, and then companies like Meta, WhatsApp and Facebook, to give us that, and for free. So I think to a large extent we have to be grateful also.
You're in big demand, speaking at seminars and so on, and also delivering courses. And I suppose it's a good example, really, of how you can sit in your office in Salt Hill and deliver courses anywhere in the world, and training anywhere in the world, and it's marvellous. Mind you, you managed to squeeze in some time to take the book and deliver it now as an audiobook. And was that a new experience, or had you done that before?
It was brand new, John. So this is my third book, and I'd never produced an audiobook before. But I saw the rise in audio consumption. Obviously, radio leads the way in terms of audio, but podcasting is growing and audiobook consumption is growing. And so I said to my publishing company, listen, let's do an audiobook. And so I started recording that late last year, obviously after the book was written and published. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. But one of the kind of nervousnesses that I had around it is that sometimes when I'm talking, and people might know me by listening to me, but when Joanne goes into work mode, she actually sounds like she's back in Highland reading a news bulletin. And so I was worried. I know this is 20 years on, it's absolutely mad. So a guy called Stephen George was producing the audiobook, and he's based in Atlanta in the United States. So I was in an audio booth in Portershed in Galway City, and he was able to coach me through it. And I admitted this to him. I said, listen, Stephen, when I go professional with my voice, it sounds like I'm reading an audiobook, and nobody's going to, or reading a news bulletin, and nobody's going to want to listen to me talking like that for 6.5 hours. So he was able to coach me through it, and the final product, I think, is really good. Obviously, it's produced to a high standard. But I think your listeners and my audiobook listeners are going to have to adjudicate on whether I'm easy to listen to.
Whether you sound like a newsreader or not. Old habits die hard, Joanne.
I know.
Well, listen, it's out. It's out now. Well, the audio version is out now, and the book has been out for a while. A Public Sector Marketing Pro, and already it's on the on the curriculum of a university in San Francisco. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, a lecturer in a non-profit marketing degree reached out to me and he said, "Can I have a copy of the book?" And so it's good practice to give people copies for free if they're putting them in libraries or curriculums. And so it's in San Francisco University, and it's one of the books that the students are asked to read. And it goes to libraries and to organisations across the world. It went to the Houses of the Oireachtas yesterday, so I put it in the post to the Houses of the Oireachtas.
Well, there's a good chance that over in San Francisco they won't be familiar with your previous life as a newsreader, so be a new page altogether. Thanks, Joanne. Best luck with it.
Thanks, John.
If you smell gas at home or on the street, don't ignore it. Open windows and doors.